Wow, welcome back. Episode 4, guys.
Before we get started on
Okay.
today's episode, I just want to make a quick reference to last week. We both fumbled for a person's name, and that guy's name is Brigham Bueller, and he is a pharmacist, compound pharmacist, and he has been on the Sean Ryan Show and he has been on Joe Rogan's show. Check out some of the things that he has to say about the medical insurance and healthcare and pharmaceutical industries.
Yes. I've only watched a little bit of him, but what I did get from him was a lot of information
Yes,
in just one episode.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So you can lead us off now for what we're going to talk about tonight.
Okay, yeah. Today we're going to change it up a little bit. We're going to get into some ancient civilizations and not so much aliens, but like it all kind of coincides. So I think at some point we'll probably touch on that too. But we were talking about jumping into the ancient civilization topic and how wild that is.
Not only wild, but incredibly vast.
It is.
There's a lot of stuff out there, information that's out there to cover. So it's kind of like I don't know how we want to attack this, but I've got some stuff that I can talk about that's not really ancient civilization related, but it is somewhat.
Was that what we
along
were
the
going to
same
talk
lines. Yeah.
about? Okay.
But it's along the same line. So and I think a lot of times when people dive into the ancient civilization world and talk about technology and the complexity of some of that stuff,
Yeah.
their civilization, it almost always leads to a conversation about extraterrestrials
Yes.
and UFOs. So one of the things that I want to touch on relates to that.
Yes, which I'd be more interested in leaning towards that. But I wanted to touch on, because this kind of leads into that. I was watching, I forget what it was, but it was along the lines of ancient civilizations and how the Sumerians, is that what it is? Is that their? I believe that was they're like the first
Yes.
group of
Yeah.
humanity, and how they were supposedly visited by these celestial beings to teach agriculture and learning technology and language and everything.
Yeah.
But also like breeding with humans to create like a superior
Right.
ruler, I guess.
Right.
And how like humans were like in legend and mythological, I guess, humans were slaves to build these structures and things that we know as like the pyramids and et cetera, all the seven wonders, all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
But in theory. But it's kind of crazy because they're always kind of depicted as like these almost like interstellar astronauts that came to Earth to mine gold and mine things to supposedly repair their atmosphere, and they left Earth, and then we were supposed to like kind of fend for ourselves, and that's kind of like supposedly the first start of humanity on Earth.
Yeah. And one of the interesting things that I learned about recently or heard about for the first time, so is related to these catastrophic events that have happened in human history,
Right.
or in the history of our planet, I guess. One of which is referenced in the Bible is the Great Flood, right?
Right, yeah.
And there's debate whether that was the whole planet or a portion of the world or whatever. So I was listening to a guy by the name of Tim Alberino, who is a kind of like Indiana Jones type of a
Okay,
guy.
yeah.
He's not really an archaeologist by
Right.
education, but that's kind of what he is interested in. But he was talking about, so we always hear scientists reference the Big Bang Theory.
Right.
And that was like the creation of the universe or
Yes.
whatever. And he referenced, and I don't have the details on this. I probably should have looked this up. But he references a story in a part of the Bible that is not part of our traditional Bible.
Okay.
Talking about a planet that gets destroyed.
Right.
And so his theory it was that as this planet blows apart and you have all these pieces of it flying around the universe, that somehow there's like a larger piece that's got this debris trail behind it.
Right.
And it's circling within our known universe.
Yeah.
And it's also related to the way that the Earth is tilted on the axis.
Yeah.
And so it was like every 2,964 years,
Right.
this debris field comes in contact with Earth.
Yeah.
And creates these cataclysmic events on the planet, and it's almost like a we're gonna start over.
It's like essentially a
reset.
restart button. Yeah.
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 So when you think about all these things like the dinosaurs and
Right.
that conversation, what happened to them, and then the flood and all these things, I think that one of the most interesting things of the ancient civilization stuff is, like you said, in some of the Sanskrit that's been found from the Sumerians, is like these references to things that appear to be very highly technologically advanced for that time, obviously.
And even now.
And even now, there's artwork or drawings or whatever you want to call them in all around the world, different parts of the world, showing like people flying in some sort of a
Yeah, like spacecraft.
some sort of a vehicle.
Yeah.
That's
and almost
flying.
like not quite alien like, but like just like
yeah,
bit higher beings than
Right,
humans,
right.
you know. And that kind of goes into play with like the seven wonders of the world and like the pyramids and like the design. They're saying that the pyramids was not an active design in the process of building it, because like how could they have just come up with that?
yeah,
And that the structure of that was just too complex, and like the measurements and everything of it for just like these groups of slaves to just build this, you know, like
right. And there are all kinds of theories out there about, there's the different tunnels that are inside these pyramids, and
Yeah.
are some of those energy sources? And because I think, like, historically, we were taught in school that the slaves just they
Right.
put this 10,000-pound rock on a bunch of logs and then rolled it, and then okay, how did they build these stories high?
Yeah,
like
we've
how are they
seen-
getting these up there?
we've
so-
seen how large they are.
so, and then we were taught that, they have this intricate tunnel design in there. That's because that's, what the Pharaoh wanted and his
Right.
burial place and his all this stuff. And now there's people that are saying that there may be more to it than that.
Yeah. And this is also like on legend kind of, but I don't know if it's under the Sphinx or one of the pyramids, but there's the sarcophagus of Osiris, which Osiris is also, we don't know if he was like a symbol or if he was actually real or what it was, but
Yeah.
he has like a 9-foot sarcophagus. Like I forget. I think they said, don't quote me on this, I think they said 10 stories below ground. I don't know if it's that deep. That could be totally wrong. But archaeologists and stuff have said that like they believe that the sarcophagus, so the name sarcophagus means flesh eater, and when they would bury a pharaoh or whoever, and what it was supposed to do is it was like a teleportation device for the body, or
Okay.
it would like consume the flesh and the bones of the body and like transcend that that person somewhere else to some other wherever. And that's why they say maybe that's why there's not a body in there and all this stuff. But it's crazy because you hear about all the ancient rulers and all like the symbolic things they did for burials and all that kind of stuff, and how these people were viewed as a little higher than a regular person, but not quite a god either, you know?
Yeah, I think the architectural stuff is remarkable, and some of the stuff that has been found around the world can't even be replicated today.
No.
We're talking about pieces of granite that are 20 feet by 20 feet by 10 feet high, that weigh just 5,000 pounds,
Right.
8,000 pounds, and they are cut with intricate precision.
Yeah.
Like it's a perfect right angle. They'll find holes throughout these that are perfectly circle, going, several feet into a structure. And it's like, how you're telling me that some dude like had a stick and he was going like this and made a drill out of it with a piece of wood?
Had his wooden protractor and and ruler. And what's crazy about the pyramids is, like, just to put this into perspective, so the pyramids were built 4,000 years ago. I don't know what it was. To put this in perspective, though, is the Eiffel Tower was the first thing that humans built since the pyramids at that height.
Wow.
Which, think about the time gap on that, too. Mm-hmm. I mean, and compared to that, the Eiffel Tower wasn't made that long ago.
Right. Right.
Just to think that many thousands of years that supposedly humans made pyramids, and then the Eiffel Tower is the next biggest thing we created ourselves.
That's wild to think that. Yeah. But yeah, I want to just kind of shift the gear a little bit here and talk about some of maybe the more extraterrestrial type stuff, because that stuff is very intriguing to me. And I was up until within the last probably 5 years, I was I was the kind of person that would believe, like, because I was with some folks like 5 years ago, right at the beginning, like during COVID, and the question came up about, like, do you believe that aliens exist? And if you're a Christian, do you believe that that's even possible? Because, is that referenced in the Bible, et cetera? Right. And I was the kind of person like, well, have I read the Bible? Yeah. Do I understand all of it? And can I quote stuff? No. So I don't know if it's specifically referenced, but my education tells me it's not. So I was like, I don't know. I know people say they saw flying saucers or whatever. Yeah. Great. Okay, cool. But my view has changed on that a lot. Just because some of this ancient alien type stuff that you're talking about with the Sumerians and other cultures, ancient cultures that show these beings on some sort of aircraft type thing. And so an interesting story that Tim Alberino talks about is the Peruvian skin peelers. Are you familiar with this?
I've heard of it.
And so apparently there's an area in the Peruvian jungle in the Amazon, where these people, these groups of people, the villages or whatever, were being terrorized by people that they were calling skin peelers. The skin peeler legend, according to him, was something that's only, in the last like 40 or 50 years. It was like supposedly some sort of god that would come back and like take the faces off of people or whatever. So that's not really relevant to the story. But so these people were telling this how this happened, and there was a girl that they actually attempted to abduct her. They actually had their hands on her and tried to make some incisions on her neck. And all of these people's stories were the same, that there were these 6.5, 7, 8 foot tall men that they believed to be men, dressed in black like body armor, with a helmet with like the almond shaped eyes.
Oh yeah.
And they were like floating on something up like a foot off the ground.
Oh wow.
And there was a period of time where these villages would show up at night and like terrorize these people. So they were doing whatever they could to battle them. Like they all had like shotguns, and they were making all kinds of different like bird shot, and they all would say like, when they'd see them, they'd chase after them, they set up traps, all this stuff. Some of them shot at them and said that they could hear the bird shot like dinking off of metal.
Yeah.
And then one story was one of these guys, they chased him to the river. He floats across the top of the water to the other side and then shoots up into the sky. And also they reported seeing UFOs, like above their villages, like in groups of 2 or 3, and they had lights. And so, yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, same with me. Like for a long time now. I mean, I've been very interested in just the universe in general, forever expanding, and the things that we constantly discover through NASA and just the photos that we're taking on, Mars and stuff like that. It's sometimes it's hard for me personally. Sometimes I think too deeply about it and I freak myself out a little bit because I start to think about how vast the universe is
Yeah.
and how much of it we haven't discovered. And I mean, even on our own planet, like the ocean is another thing where we haven't even discovered, like, it's a very small percentage, I believe.
It is. Yeah.
And that's terrifying as well. Space and water to me is like the scariest thing, and not knowing what's down there or up there or what's not at all. I mean,
Yeah.
But here's my thing too. Like as a human on our tiny little planet, I feel like you have to be extremely naive to think that we're the only thing out there. It just to me it just
Yeah.
doesn't seem possible.
I tend to agree with you. Although I've never had any kind of experience with
No, me
seeing
either.
a UFO or anything like that. I know a couple people who claim to have seen stuff, and I'm not discounting it. And just because I've never seen it doesn't mean doesn't exist.
Right.
So
Yeah, we do so many things to, like, whether it's studying space and astronomy and all that, or just all the science fiction that we create on Earth ourselves of
Yeah.
of the things that we've all grown up with and learned and watched, and even like it's been out like over 10 years, but like the Interstellar movie
Yeah.
that Christopher Nolan made, that has got to be one of the closest things to being like the most realistic space adventure, I guess, that you could
Yeah.
ever watch on screen. And like to think about, say, in our time where Earth maybe becomes inhabitable, or we lose crops or whatever it is, and we have to find a way to leave this planet, which I think is also a scary thought. Not that it'll ever happen, but when you see something like that, it's like, well, even though it's fiction, what they're doing isn't that far fetched.
no, I mean, we've all kind of heard the stories via social media about these ultra wealthy people that are supposedly building bunkers.
Right.
Right. And that is interesting. Question is, why I mean, you wouldn't do it if you didn't feel that you needed to. Obviously you got money to spend
Yeah.
on whatever you want, and that's what you want to do. But it takes me back. You and I briefly touched on this off camera. The civilization in Turkey
Oh yeah.
that was discovered that was underground,
Right.
that was basically like a little city underground. Why did they have that?
Yeah. What's that for?
What were they afraid of?
Right.
And I don't remember the time frame of when they think that was constructed, but regardless of that fact, there had to have been a reason that this village of people, however many, I mean, I think they said there could have been like 5,000 people that were living
Yeah.
in this underground bunker village, whatever you want to call it. And so somehow we're all convinced that this is a good idea. We need to do this for the survival of our group.
Right. Yeah, and that kind of goes into play with. I saw something too where they were talking about how all these ancient civilizations were preparing and had all these messages to, like, basically us and future civilizations that were created over time, but like how they were all finding ways, like they're saying like the reset of the of planet Earth. It's like those people. It's almost like warning those people that Earth's not always going to be inhabitable. Basically, every so many thousand years, we either have to leave or we go extinct.
Yeah, and that goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning with these
Yeah.
cataclysmic events that essentially wipe out civilization as we know it.
Right.
And then there's this restart. So it's interesting to ponder that, because it appears from some of the evidence that's out there that civilizations before us either went through that or were attempting to prepare for it.
Right.
So what did they know? And that takes me back to the whole concept of the technology. How, and don't get me wrong, we are an extremely technologically advanced society today, right? I mean, I just look at my lifetime how much things have changed. But you look at some of these civilizations and because we think, oh, if this was something that was 1000 BC, like how did they know how to make an aqueduct?
Right.
How did they know,
Like the Roman Empire is one of the most impressive things ever. Like everything that they had. I mean, even in that time, like,
Yeah.
And some people could argue that maybe back then we were advancing our minds and learning more as a species with our brains than actually advancing technology, which like we do today.
Yeah, because it wasn't all that long after the Roman Empire where we had literally people like taking a shit in a pot and dumping it out a window onto the street.
Yeah, right.
It wasn't like the Romans had an answer for that.
Yeah.
How did
we
not
shift like into the
translate-
Middle Ages basically?
Right. How did we go from that where hey, it's essentially like our version of the toilet and it goes down this and the water comes and out it goes into the river, whatever, to 1,000 years later or 800 years later or whatever it was, we're dumping shit in the street.
Yeah.
Like, well, how does it what happened?
That's what's crazy. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's wild. So to go back onto the UFOs and aliens, though, that's another thing that I feel like there is definitely a significant amount of things that we have discovered that we definitely don't know about.
Sure.
With Area 51 and everything else that is out there.
Sure.
My thing is we may have discovered some things and we've seen things, but do you think that humans have come in contact with extraterrestrial life?
Yes, I believe that's true.
Yeah, I do too.
I mean, there is the ancient alien theory that says that, and there is a reference to this in other types of cultures where you mentioned it, where the gods, I mean, that's part of the Greek god culture too, right? I mean, was that these gods came to Earth. So were the gods or were they an extraterrestrial being that came to Earth and were sharing knowledge and technology, but also making children with people on Earth? Yeah. I mean, there's you can get into the whole conversation about giants. There are people that believe that giants were on this planet.
Yeah, if you look into like the Norse mythology too, it's very, very deep in there.
So I think the answer is yes. And what's interesting to me is that I feel like our culture today and our society today, it's like, yes, I think people have come in contact with them, but I don't feel like it seems like the contact doesn't seem to be the same as it was in being recorded in these previous civilizations and cultures, where there was like, it was more of like this, hey, we're going to show you stuff and teach you things. And now it's just like, yeah, I saw a saucer in the sky. But there are stories out there of people who have been abducted.
Right.
Fire in the Sky. Have you ever seen that movie?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a wild story. True. I don't know.
I mean, when you think about it, like, and it doesn't even, alien doesn't necessarily mean like some green looking like monster person, like if you go back to the Interstellar film, like Cooper goes off into space to go to this wormhole because they made contact with someone, which we assume is an alien or but they're telling us that they put this wormhole there to hopefully save Earth. And they go to this wormhole and end up in this other part of the universe.
Yeah.
But because of the whole relativity and everything with space and all that, by the end of the film, you realize that Cooper, like his future self, was warning them that they needed to leave Earth, which is so and it's really hard to understand.
That's
but
tough
it's
to
like,
wrap your brain around that.
And and the whole black hole and like time dilation and everything, like it's all crazy. But it could also be like maybe aliens aren't necessarily aliens, they're just someone not from Earth,
But interestingly, in some of these, some of this art that has been uncovered in cultures, they do show there are figures that are reminiscent of like the little green man.
Yes, they are,
You know,
yeah.
with these almond-shaped, oversized eyes and slender,
Tall, lanky
bigger
beings.
heads.
Yeah, and you can't tell me someone just came up with that and carved it into stone.
Well, I
You
mean,
know.
I'm going to say no because typically that type of stuff was done as a reflection of their everyday life.
Right.
Like, you know, they would do, hey, here's a picture of us. Here's a picture of our group of dudes going out and killing a woolly mammoth.
Right, yeah.
You know, or here we are harvesting the crops.
Right.
Right. Those types of things. Oh, here we are worshiping our queen.
Yes.
So those things. Those like everyday life. So like, oh, somebody came up like, hey guys, check this out. I'm gonna draw this like freaky looking dude on here. This will get him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
I mean, like what frame of reference would anybody have in that time period to come up with that?
Yeah.
I mean, we have the frame of reference now because our brain has been filled with all of that stuff,
Right.
from the X-Files to whatever. Like this is what an alien looks like. So, yeah. But then
It's hard to say.
it's
And I don't know if in any of our lifetimes we'll ever know for sure or experience any of it. But I feel like with the way things are, it could happen. Anything,
Yeah,
and it may not happen in a way we may not expect. But
I mean, could it be happening and we don't even?
yeah,
we're not even
it could
aware
have
of
been
it?
happening for years and we don't even
We're
know.
not even aware of it.
Yeah, they could be walking amongst us and we would have no idea. You never know.
Right. You know, we don't know the motivation, but
No, we don't.
could it be similar to what it was in these ancient civilizations where they were communicating with these people in an effort to try to show them ways to make life better?
Right,
I don't know.
No, you're right, because I mean, in all those old texts and everything, I mean, it shows that they were trying to like teach humanity how to be and how to do things, and giving them that leverage to like build and create and expand on whatever civilization
Yeah.
they were in at the time. And
And it makes me wonder, were people in those civilizations more receptive
right,
to that than we might be today? And I'm talking as our society in general. I'm not
Yeah.
talking. I know there are people that would be, oh, absolutely, would love to have an alien come visit
Yeah.
me. I get that.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, like,
As a whole.
do they sense that our society today is not as open-minded or willing to receive that information
right.
than previous civilization?
Yeah, I could see that with how we are now, people would be too close-minded now, I think. Or people are, I think, a little too
I think
close-minded
there
with
are
certain things.
Yeah, with certain things there are, sure.
And like we've become a very selfish species, and it's and also almost kind of like not I don't want to say entitled. I don't know what the word I'm trying to say is, but like we almost kind of feel invincible sometimes.
Yeah.
And we're definitely not. We're probably the
Well, I think we all think we're always like we're the smartest person, right?
Yeah.
Like we know everything,
Right.
Right, and that's kind of like human nature today is to like, oh well, I saw it on the internet, and
yeah.
and I know we're talking about stuff that we've seen on the internet or heard,
Right,
But
sure.
I'm not. But some of this information has also been presented by credible sources and credible
Yes.
people,
Right.
who have done the research or discovered these things. So it's not all just a bunch of
No, I mean you got
BS.
people that have been studying this their entire career, or,
right, right.
and it is really interesting. And I wish, and I mean, it's never too late to go back and learn more, because we have access to so much knowledge now just by having a phone in your hand. But like I did start taking astronomy in college, and I wish I would have stuck with that, because as being older now, I'm much more interested in it than I was
Yeah.
back then.
Yeah.
And it's definitely one of my most favorite topics to talk about.
I just don't think that it's coincidental, and I'm a person that doesn't believe in coincidences, but so I don't think it's coincidental that there are cultures from all around the world in who have essentially retold a similar story.
Yeah, it's like a game of telephone.
Yeah, I don't think that that's coincidental.
I don't
There's
either.
got to be something to that. But the interesting thing is, like, despite we got a lot of really smart people out there, right?
Yeah.
And we got a lot of technology that's available to these super smart individuals, and it's like we still haven't been able to put the puzzle together.
Yeah, I know.
Which is it's interesting to me that
Right.
that we're there, and maybe, and I, you know, you can also make the argument that maybe we're not meant to know all that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But we're curious beings, and we
Yeah.
want to know what's beyond what we are,
Right.
you know, or how we got here, or what else. I mean, we have enough technology where we've explored a very small fraction of space, and you know, and seen things, and
You want to talk about the ocean?
yeah, sure.
So yeah, I just sort of started to dive into that theory out there that there are aliens living in
Underwater. Yeah.
and I don't know a whole lot about it. Just kind of just started to scratch the surface of it, but
I mean, when you just think about it, like a lot of I was telling Alexis this the other day, like the deeper you go into the ocean of what we know of, a lot of the life down there starts to look very alien.
oh yeah,
You know,
and it's almost like
and they're intelligent animals too.
yeah, and they've adapted adapted to living, you know,
Yeah.
very very deep in the ocean. Yeah, it's intriguing stuff, and it you know, we have the legend of Atlantis,
Right. Right.
which, you know,
It's-
there have been people that have been trying to figure out where that is.
Well, you talked about
For-
an underwater civilization that's, or an underground civilization, but
but could that civilization been underwater at some time in history?
sure.
Maybe.
I mean,
mean-
the more you look into stuff like that, the more it doesn't seem unbelievable. I mean,
Right.
there's even theories that like maybe the pyramids were underwater at one point,
Yeah.
you know, and to have a Mayan city or Atlantis or whatever underwater somewhere. I mean, I feel like it's possible,
Well, and again, you have these cataclysmic events that
right?
supposedly have happened. One of which we know was a flood. What's possible?
And in the Legend of Atlantis, like even though they were like just like all these other ones, they had advanced technology. They flew around on things. They had all these.
Yeah.
The design of their entire city was amazing, and
Right.
I know it's not real, but like
but but could there have been some version of it? Maybe
that influenced that legend. You know,
right. You know,
Yeah.
we've seen there was Disney did a movie.
Disney
right?
did the movie. Yeah,
Michael
like
J. Fox was a voice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
in the '90s or
Yeah.
whatever. And I mean, that's obviously an adaptation of the
Right.
story, but could that have existed? Maybe not in that to look just like that,
right. No,
but could something like that have actually been around? If you dive into some of the discussion about the flood, the Great Flood, and that area of the world, you know, that the part of the Middle East and
Yeah.
northern part of Africa today, it's interesting to look at some of the landscape around there, because in a lot of places it's like it's desert, and then there's places where it's lush and green. That's an interesting thing to look into. Also, is what did that flood actually do? Was it just that part of the world, or
right.
did it cover our entire world? Where we're now finding. Tim Alberino talks about a city, a long lost city that he and I can't remember the guy's name. He's an Ecuadorian archaeologist. Discovered in the jungle, and it was like, of course, all the local people were obviously aware of it,
Yeah, right.
knew it was there, but like Western scientists had never come across it.
Yeah,
And it was all just magnificent architecture and all this stuff we're talking about, like everything like perfectly aligned, 90-degree angles, perfect circles, that kind of stuff. And
yeah,
and all of a sudden they find it where it had never been found before.
yeah. And like every like Greece and Rome and India and all those places, had all these like extravagant,
Yeah.
you know,
The architecture
structures.
and
It's
the-
just
Yeah.
it's almost unbelievable that like anyone could ever create something like that.
Well, and even if you go into, during the Middle Ages and during the Renaissance period
Mm-hmm.
in throughout Europe, and you go and look at some of the architecture, it's phenomenal.
Like the
We don't build
castles and
things like that.
everything?
We don't
Yeah.
build things like that today.
No.
I mean, it's beautiful stuff, and it stood the test of time. It's
Yeah.
absolutely just awe-inspiring. You walk into like a place like Notre Dame, for example.
Yeah. Oh
just
my
an
gosh.
easy thing to pick. I've been there a couple times, and to go there and just see it and the scope of it and the scale of it and the intricacy of it, it's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
And you
And like
just
a coliseum.
yeah,
you
and you
know.
just go, wow, like people built that.
Yeah.
So how did those people, like we were just talking about how civilization advances, and we're talking about the technological advances that the Romans had in their cities, and then we go to the the dark ages of where we're shitting in the streets, and then we come out of that, this Renaissance. Like what happened?
Yeah.
How did people, where did people come up with that inspiration to show that creativity in art, architecture, and that kind of thing? It's remarkable.
It really is. And not that what we build today isn't amazing. I mean, there's some amazing buildings around the world
Yeah,
that we've created, but it's still nothing like what it was.
I would challenge anybody to find something that's been built in the last 50 years that rivals a Notre Dame or a place like that.
Yeah.
What it's called, but I mean, okay, it's tall
Yeah, it's tall.
and obviously architecturally sound,
Right.
but does that, for me, that's not as awe-inspiring
No.
as some of the architecture from the Renaissance period and
Yeah.
that stretch, and obviously even prior to that, the Sphinx, for example.
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me? Like some dudes running around in loincloths and bare feet made that.
Yeah. There's no
They
way.
up there with a little chisel and
Yeah.
yeah.
There's no way.
I find that hard to believe, but I don't know. Yeah, I guess I think this topic. I would like to have some further conversation about this in the future.
I would too.
Like I said when we started, it's very there's a lot.
It's vast.
And it's all, to me, it all seems connected. When you talk about the ancient civilizations, you talk about I don't want to use the term aliens because I don't think that sounds cheesy. Extraterrestrials, or not of this planet, people that-
Yeah.
not of this planet. Like I said, the precision that some of and like Machu Picchu, for example.
Yeah.
Like this place is like, I've never been. I've heard it's absolutely worth, if you ever had the opportunity to see it, it's definitely worth seeing. But the remoteness of some of these structures that have been discovered.
Yeah.
You're telling me that people drug these and they chiseled them and carved them, and they're huge, and they drug them up the mountain?
Yeah. Yeah. Is Shangri-La another one that's like unmythic, or is it real, or Shangri-La? I can't remember.
I'm gonna.
But I feel like that's
I'm gonna
another one.
Hit the Google on that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But
Let's see.
you're right though. Like I couldn't imagine an ancient civilization of like where, regardless of how smart you are and capable, I just feel like they not only lack the resources and ability to drag that kind of stuff and build things of that stature.
So apparently, Shangri-La is a fictional earthly paradise described in the 1933 James Hilton novel Lost Horizon. It is believed to be inspired by the legendary Tibetan paradise of Shambhala,
Oh,
a
okay.
mythical kingdom associated with Tibetan Buddhism.
Gotcha.
No, I can't. I literally refuse to believe that that's the way these things were done. I just can't. You can't tell me that. And I've seen, if you've ever watched Ancient Aliens on
Oh,
History
yeah.
Channel, there's, I don't know,
I've watched a lot of it.
15 seasons, 20
Yeah.
seasons, whatever. They dive into some of that stuff about people trying to replicate that, the tools and technology that we have available today, and they're not able to do it.
That tells me something, you know.
Right.
And it's not that we aren't smart, you know. I mean, these people that are doing that are, you know, they're capable of building things. Like, they understand what the
Yeah.
job is.
Right.
But the fact that they can't replicate something like that was built
And I know
thousands of years ago.
the naysayers can come up with the argument that, oh, we don't need to build things like that today, so why would we need to do it? I mean,
Okay.
okay, fair maybe,
But it's the wonder around it.
but that's the part that's so interesting to me.
Yeah.
Is that so I would say to that person, so you're telling me that at one point in time people were able to do that, but we can't today because we don't need to.
Right.
Okay.
It is pretty amazing because when you think about it too, it's like they build all these things. They built these cities and all this, and you know, people were just trying to, you know, we were trying to civilize and create places for people to live and flourish, and
Yeah.
it's like they did all that back then, and nowadays it's like we're so controlled by wealth and money. I feel like we don't, even though there are some amazing cities around the entire world,
Sure.
we're not even like, we're not trying to do anything like that now.
I feel like, and I feel like in those in those cultures, it was, and I know it's not the case for all of them, but it was people kind of coming together for a common goal,
Right.
like a sense of like that community. Like, we're going to build this structure as in honor to honor this god or goddess or whatever place of worship for us, or we're going to build this, I mean, Great Wall of China. We're going to
That's
build this
another one.
wall to, you know, protect our land.
Yeah. Because they built that to keep out the Mongolians, right?
Right.
Or initially.
Genghis Khan.
Yeah.
Khan.
And that's another impressive piece of architecture that's
Very
just
much
like,
so.
how it's long. It's,
Very.
forget how many miles it is, but it's something
It
insane.
is, yeah. It's very, let's see.
And you know, when you look into like, there's every culture has some sort of route that leads to all this stuff.
It's
You know?
13,171 miles long.
Holy shit.
Yeah. It was built during the Ming Dynasty.
See, that's another thing. 13,000 miles.
Yeah.
How many years
through
ago?
through some crazy terrain.
Like mountains and
Mountainous
everything.
terrain. Yes.
How? That's just that. And maybe it's because of like where we are now as a society. Like, to me, that just boggles my mind that that's even possible.
I
And
feel
how long that took.
like we as a culture today would struggle like hell to build that thing.
Yeah, and we wouldn't.
Without, I mean, they build it without just destroying everything in its path.
Right.
Our solution today would be like,
Clear it
okay,
out.
we're going to go in here, we're going to just cut all this crap down and just tear it up and destroy it, and we're going to build a wall.
Yeah.
There you go. We did it. They built it around all of that stuff, despite all of those things existing, terrain existing.
Right. That's insane.
It's remarkable.
Yeah, I would really like to touch more on UFO and alien stuff
Okay. Yeah.
as a whole, like on its own.
Just that
and,
in and of itself. Yeah.
because everything we talked about in this episode could be 10 other episodes.
Yeah. 100%.
And I would like to come back to ancient civilization on some things too, eventually. Yeah, the just exploring the cosmos, learning about space and alien life, and any encounters that we might have had in our time here. I want to know more.
I do too. I'd like anybody that's watching or listening to this, put a comment out there if you've had an experience like that.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued by that stuff. I think it's kind of like the paranormal stuff that I'm sure we'll dive
I'm
into
sure we're
that
going to be
at some
touching on
point
that
in
soon
time
too. Yeah.
But listening to firsthand experiences of people that have had that happen is very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely leave us some stories or comments or anything you might know about the topics, and we'll have a conversation about it. I do want to add one thing before we go today. For now on, we are going to be on YouTube exclusively for a little while, just running into some issues with some other platforms. But if you could, I see a lot of you guys are watching the videos. If you could, please subscribe. It will help us out a lot. Leave us a like, leave us a comment, and we will catch you next time.